Hello, I am Ciaran McCarthy, and I've got with me former Essex cricketer Graham Napier, and crucially for this conversation, former Mumbai Indians cricketer Graham Napier. Graham played for Mumbai in the 2009 IPL, the only ever currently player to have played IPL cricket from England, having not played a match for England previously. He played one match in the 2009 IPL, hitting 15 runs at number 6 against Kolkata Knight Riders, and he took 1 for 27 off 4 overs. He could potentially have a mate joining him in having played IPL cricket without having played for England, as Tom Kohler-Cadmore has been picked up by Rajasthan Royals for this season's edition of the IPL. So just before we get into the questions, you can get exclusives from the cricketer for £3.99 a month if you follow the link in the description. So firstly, Graham, really appreciate your time. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's nice. I didn't even know that statistic about having not played for England and playing in the IPL, so it's quite nice to have found something else out about my career.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, as I was saying, it's interesting that since 2009, when you played your season, nobody else from England, with the talent in white ball cricket in England, nobody else has managed to play IPL cricket without having played for England. Of course, you'd assume that a lot of the better players would have played for England, but obviously you had a very good career yourself and didn't play for England. So it's obviously possible that people can slip through the cracks and still manage to play at the highest level. The IPL obviously being the most lucrative cricket league in the world, a very high level of cricket. So your IPL season obviously came off the back of a ridiculous knock of 152 not out off 58 balls in the 2008 blast against Sussex, which broke a number of records, including the most sixes in a T20 innings with 16, which was a phenomenal knock. So firstly, just plain and simple, what did it mean to you after having such a long domestic career and everything that you'd done in county cricket to be able to say you were good enough to be picked up for the most lucrative cricket league in the world?
Well, yeah, the IPL was in its infancy at that time. It was only going into its second season, I believe. And it was an unknown sort of longevity of the tournament, really. And we knew that the Indian Cricket Board were pumping a lot of finances into the IPL to really promote the game and create this new league, and to be part of that in only its second or third season was a great opportunity for me. I'd only ever played county cricket. I've been in and around the England squads, but never actually picked. So I saw it as a stepping stone, but also a huge experience and learning curve to go out there. And when I arrived out there, it was an amazing experience to go from county cricket, where you have at the time probably one overseas player, maybe two, to having a squad of 8 overseas players and or the Indian superstars that play as part of the makeup of a squad. So at times overwhelming when you look at the who's who of the list of names that were in that squad, but at the same time, what an opportunity to go out and further my game on the back of a good run of form in that season, and to continue playing as much cricket as I could at that level.
Yeah, and as you say, I think the 2009 season was the second season of the IPL, so obviously it was in its infancy. So I think the expectations would probably be a little bit bigger now with how long the IPL has been going for. But at that stage, what expectations do you think were on you, been playing in such a big league?
Well, it's a strange one, because when I arrived out in India, a lot of the local Indian lads, the youngsters in the squads, hadn't even really heard of me. So they were then sort of looking up on the internet to see who I was and what my background, because I hadn't played international cricket. And for players going forward, I think there's much more worldwide recognition of all the domestic competitions around the world now than there was back then. So for anyone going forward into the competition, it's it's fitting in because people know who you are. You're playing around the world in different tournaments. At that particular time, there was our T20 Blast, and then there was the IPL, and the Big Bash was starting to pick up momentum as well, and New Zealand competitions in New Zealand, and they were the only really ones to sort of try and get into.
It's interesting you say that there were some people in your own team that didn't really know who you are. Obviously, a lot of the people would have been international cricketers. Do you think some people potentially thought because you hadn't played international cricket, there was sort of a sense of, well, what have you done to get here? Or do you think there might have been a little bit of an opposite feeling where you were picked up and therefore seemed to be good enough, even though you hadn't played international cricket?
Personally, I feel probably not playing any international cricket possibly affected the amount of how much cricket I played in the IPL. Because people don't know much about you. They don't know your background because they haven't seen you play international cricket. So it was going to be a struggle. But as I said, when you look at the overseas players, it was a who's who of cricketers. And it was a very tough side to break into and be a consistent part of that side. And as I say, the IPL was in its infancy. The domestic game in this country was very much first class based. It was the T20 was really, really picking up momentum. And I was limited to the amount of time that I could play in the IPL because back then Essex were my main employer and they had more say in where I played and when I could play. And they wanted to be back for the first class cricket season, which is that clash. And has possibly prevented other players from going over because of county cricket and people's or cricket clubs overseeing where they're going to play when they're available.
It's interesting you say that because I think before last season, I think Sam Billings hadn't played the start of the season at Kent since 2016 because he'd always been at the IPL. So last season was the first time for 7 years that he'd actually managed to start the season with Kent. So yeah, as you say, it's a little bit of a toss-up between being able to play IPL and your county wanting you to play for them. As I mentioned previously, you had that 152 against Sussex. That presumably, I think it's fair to say that would have been one of the main drivers for you getting picked up in the IPL. There would have obviously been other things. You had a wide skill set with both bat and ball, but I think a knock like that's probably hard to ignore. Would you say?
Yeah, 100%. And that gave me the recognition and highlighted to people that I had the ability to play that format of the game. I remember one instance going out into the nets and picking up the ball and people looking at me going, "What do you mean you bowl?" So that's that whole of unknown at the time of what you can and can't do. Whereas now, everyone watches these tournaments worldwide, the 100, the Vitality Blast, then people are going overseas and playing on the Australia and the Big Bash and South African tournaments, the Caribbean. So there's much more publicity and recognition worldwide for the top players who are getting picked in these tournaments.
Yeah, and you think because you hadn't really had that recognition, and a lot of people hadn't had that recognition, because the leagues weren't as prevalent as they were as they are now. Do you think you were very much flying under the radar, and anything that you did get out of that opportunity would have been a positive because it's a new experience for you? You're mixing with a lot of quality players, and I mean your team, you had Jayasuriya, Tendulkar, Harbhajan. So even if you didn't play, I know you only played the one game, but was the experience invaluable to you because you got to mix with some of the best players in the world and potentially learn from them things that you wouldn't have been able to see had you not had that experience?
I had 8 weeks or so out of the team out in that tournament where they moved it to South Africa. And what an experience to be part of, to go out there and, as you say, the likes of Tendulkar captaining the team, Harbhajan Singh, Jayasuriya, Malinga, all these guys. And it was just fantastic to sit with them, talk cricket with them, watch them practice the way everyone goes about their individual preparation and the way they train. I picked up probably more out there by just watching other players and the way they practiced and played. Than I probably would have done in the early months of the county season in April when it's cold, wet and windy.
Yeah, I think you were 29 when you went over there, so obviously you would have had a long career up to that point. But obviously, you say that that was a very valuable experience. At your stage of your career, do you sort of wish that you might have had that a little bit earlier, because you were already a well-established player? Had you had that before, that experience mixing with all those players, that might have been more beneficial to you because you were still growing as a cricketer. I mean, obviously, any learning would be good learning at any stage of your career.
Yeah, I think when I look back on it now, those experiences I had, I look back on them so fondly. Even though I only played one game, to go out and experience the biggest league in the world at that particular time, amongst that cricketing royalty, just in itself was an experience that I never thought I'd have. And the IPL gave me that opportunity, which was fantastic. So yeah, it's a strange one, yes. And with county cricket, it was a fine blend between the two, really.
Yeah, and do you think at that stage, obviously being 29, there were learnings that you could still put into practice, and there were things that you saw in the IPL that you thought, you've played county cricket for however many years, but there were still things that, I've never thought about doing things that way, or just seeing, the hard work that people put in to be at the level as high as the IPL, that there were things that you learned that you wouldn't have had any opportunity to learn had you not played in the IPL.
Oh, 100%. Playing in Indian conditions. I've been to India on tours and training camps, but sitting there talking to the top players, and I remember one instance talking to Sachin Tendulkar about playing when the ball was dewy. So the outfields were soaking wet, the ball was wet, and in practice I was trying to hit the ball as far as I could straight, which was my strength. And he said and talked about using the wet ball and almost slicing the ball off the bat, because it just skidded off the bat with so much more pace than trying to hit a wet, heavy ball that's waterlogged. So little skills like that I would never have picked up in the county season. And then watching the likes of Malinga practice his bowling, I'd never seen anything like it really in county cricket. And the time that he spent practicing hitting those Yorkers, ball after ball, and doing it, executing it, just gave me those. I suppose it was a finishing school. Even though I was 29, it was a finishing school for my learning these new skill sets over and over again. And then working with the likes of John T. Rhodes as a fielding coach, who's and the level of expectations, standards that he had, just sort of possibly added longevity to my own career.
And do you think having those experiences and having those conversations, being able to mix with some of the best players in the world, would you say that spurred you on to want to get back to that level again and want to play with, England internationals, if that could potentially give you a springboard to playing for England?
I think by the age of 29, I'd probably realised that this was an opportunity that was a one-off opportunity, really, for myself. And if I was going to push for an England side, then yes, it was a good time to do it. But there weren't many people making their debuts at the age of 29 for England. But following that, my one game, I was then selected for the World Cup squad in 2009. But unfortunately didn't play a game. So all of those things sort of went into the mixing pot for me to push towards that.
It's interesting that you say that, because unless my maths is far wrong, I believe Tom Kohler-Cadmore was also 29. So it's a very similar situation. As I mentioned, he has been picked up at the IPL this season, and if he does play, he'll be the first non-capped Englishman to play since yourself. So it's very similar to your own situation. If he doesn't play a game, but the fact that he's been, putting in hard work in a lot of franchise leagues across the world, he obviously won the T20 Blast with Somerset last season and hit north of 400 runs, I think it was. Would you say, again, the experience of mixing with players at that high level would be not only a good experience for him to be able to learn, but as you said, it's a different cultural experience that you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Yeah, and I think the way that the England setup views players now is very different to back in 2009. when you look at the side, it was pretty much the Test side and a few other people coming in and out in 2009. Now you've got specialist squads. So if someone's in form and they're playing well, then they can be picked up and put into those squads. So I think there's more opportunity for everybody to be selected, whereas sort of 2009, back in that era of cricket, most of the sides were made out of one squad and then they pulled one or two people in. Now you can look at the side and they're, it'd be a totally different team to the Test squad.
And I doubt you would have had any reason to have had any contact with Tom Kohler-Cadmore, but this might be a difficult question to answer. But would you have any advice for him, given that he's in the position that you've been in previously?
Plenty of advice. First one, enjoy it. It's a great opportunity to see the world, play in different conditions, but experience those things that not many people have done. As you say, it's only international players have done it, and the opportunity for him to go out and be part of a side and not have played international cricket is a huge opportunity for anybody. So go out there, soak up the atmosphere. I remember being 12th man for one match in the third IPL. I didn't play any games, but I was out with the squad. And I asked the coach, can I go out and bowl in the middle, just to experience what it was like with 55,000 people in a stadium, screaming their heads off when Sachin Tendulkar walked out to the pitch for the toss of the coin. And for me, that was another experience that will always live with me, is the noise and the atmosphere. Totally different to anything you get in county cricket. And I think probably cricket anywhere in the world. So just soak up every opportunity and enjoy it, and whether he plays or not, whether he's successful or not, just enjoy it and soak it all up.
And with reference to the fact that, as you said, you were picked up in an England squad after your IPL season but didn't play, if Tom does manage to play for Rajasthan Royals, crucially given the fact he's playing for the same team as Joss Buttler, how valuable do you think just one or two good performances could be for the trajectory of his career after this point?
It's a big shot window, isn't it? And if you do well, not only the England selectors looking at you, but the worldwide selection. And if people see the ability in somebody and pick them, then they're doing it for a reason. And if he then goes on and does well in the tournament, then it's a great opportunity for him to pick up an international selection and play for England and do well at the highest level.
And on the flip side to that, if he doesn't play, do you think that's less of a drawback than it would have been in previous years, given the fact that obviously you want to do it in an IPL because it's the biggest cricket league in the world, but Tom Kohler-Cadmore's played a lot of PSL cricket over the past few years. Obviously, as I mentioned, he's done well in the Blast recently. He's played in a number of different franchise competitions. So while the shop window previously would have been just IPL cricket when that was the big one, now it's sort of, well, even if you don't play in the IPL, there's still a lot of other leagues that you can show your quality in around the world.
Yeah, the way I also sometimes look at it is almost like a share price. And when players are doing well in tournaments, their share price goes up. And if they're not doing well and they're not getting seen, your share price goes down. And so if he wants to do really well in the tournament and perform well, he will make himself available to other franchises and international cricket. And if you're not playing, you've got to make the most of it to try and get your form, because it's difficult if you're not playing. And being 12th man or being in a squad, it's very difficult to get those opportunities. And then when they do come, you've got to take them on that instant. So for him, if he's not playing, he's got to make sure he's practicing hard, concentrating on when that opportunity arises, he takes it first time round.
And with reference to the fact that there are a lot of franchise tournaments at the moment, and a lot of those sort of were in their infancy just after the end of your career and sort of as your career was finishing. I know you played in New Zealand as well, but obviously that's not really seen as one of the big ones. Do you feel sort of unfortunate that you sort of just missed the boat on that, with them just coming as your career was finishing? Because, you know, as I mentioned, with the fact that you could bowl quick, bowl good Yorkers, hit a big ball, you would have been probably quite well sought after in the franchise circuit at the moment. Do you feel like sort of unlucky that your career finished when it did? Obviously, that's only, you know, because of your age and how long you've been playing. You couldn't have really continued for any longer. But do you think your career might have been slightly different, and it's slightly unfortunate that you weren't able to have more of an opportunity in franchise cricket?
I would love to be playing now. I'd love to be part of the current way of thinking about the way cricket is played. Unfortunately for me, I was just born in the wrong era, and you can't change anything about that. What I love now is watching and listening to the way they talk about the freedom players have to play the way they want to. There were a lot of restrictions. If you hit a 6, you're expected to hit a 1 the next ball and rotate strike. Whereas now it's hit 6, we'll hit another 6, hit another 6. So the approach to the way people play cricket now is something I would have really loved to be part of. But as I said, we can't turn back the clock. And it's just unfortunate for me that my career was, and I had don't get me wrong, I had a lovely career. I had 19, nearly 20 seasons of professional cricket. And I enjoyed every single one of them. So I've never wished that away. But yeah, it'd be nice to be part of this current trend in cricket where there's a lot more freedom for players to express themselves in the way and in their own abilities and beliefs.
And in the wider picture, there's been yourself, potentially Tom Kohler-Cadmore, having played IPL cricket without having played for England. With the talent that England have got in white ball cricket at the moment, and there are some players that are probably deserving of having played, but because there's that much talent all over the country, there are players that haven't played any international cricket. Do you see the potential that there will be more uncapped Englishmen going to the IPL soon? I mean, I know you said you didn't actually know that you were the only one so far, but with the talent, do you think it's something that can happen more and more in coming years?
I think so. With the way that the tournaments are expanding, I think there is scope for more and more players to be picked up as youngsters early on, when people get identified as a young age as being a very good white ball specialist cricketer. There will be those opportunities for them going forward, but it's a tough market. The marketplace for the IPL is international cricket. Some of the franchises will look at the domestic games, but it is international cricket and the Big Bash. You've got to break into those tournaments, and that is the sort of where people will get recognised, and then the franchises will look to pick them up either in the auctions or outside of the auctions, as was in my case.
Well, thank you very much, Graham. That was a very good learning experience, and thank you everybody for listening.